Good morning, planet Earth. I'm Mango Thunderslice, and you're tuned into the weekly Anarchist news for August 28th, 2016. Alright, starting off this week with the American political circus, why not? Gary Johnson, in case you haven't heard of him, is the Libertarian candidate for President of the United States this year, and he has basically committed the cardinal sin of running as a Libertarian, which is to fail to be a Libertarian. Nobody really expects Jill Stein or Gary Johnson to win. Their whole thing is just to represent an alternative viewpoint that is consistent and hopefully will draw in more people. But instead we have Gary Johnson, who despite his prior good work within the liberty movement is now basically a vote-pandering loser. He recently said that mandatory vaccination laws are okay for a libertarian, and that because government science says there's minor benefit, that, for the greater good, we should just allow everyone to be forcibly vaccinated. And this is pretty sad, really, really sad for a libertarian candidate. Maybe forced organ harvesting is okay by Gary if it's for the greater good, right? Because government science says it's a minor benefit, so liberty goes out the window. What a loser. I have great hope for the Libertarian Party going forward, but at a time when Hillary and Trump are so disliked, all you have to do right now as a candidate is just be a Libertarian, and Gary Johnson has failed at that, so that's sad. But moving on, Hillary has an event in Mango's hometown of Reno, Nevada, and she took time to call out InfoWars and the internet as sources of conspiracy theories against her. I guess, the easily available info on the internet regarding Hillary's just blatant corruption and also obvious health problems is, widely accessible on the internet. We've got technology columnists for major news magazines and newspapers saying that Google should fix this, and in fact Google has. Basically, Google is now censoring results regarding Hillary's corruption and her health issues, which is so obvious to anyone who doesn't watch the Clinton News Network and all these other joke channels for their main news. So yeah, she said that conspiracy theories are bad, and but nobody spins them like Hillary, because she said Vladimir Putin is the arch-evil ringleader, sitting in Moscow, stroking his cat, and organizing his vast networks of minions, all to stop Hillary Clinton from her revolutionary bid to become the first communist woman president of the United States. Good God, woman, are you freaking serious? What this does show is that the mainstream media is fucked, and that basically alternative media through the internet is now dominating the news cycle and controlling it, which is a beautiful development that she has to take time out of her campaign to address InfoWars and the internet for providing news that shows her in a less than favorable light. Oh man, this is great. So next up in the United States, the Federal Reserve Gang and central banker cabal cohort met at Jackson Hole, Wyoming to babble around their failures of policy and basically just play the modern day soothsayer oracle and try and give the financial markets some direction in this asinine wonderland of just ridiculous policies that they've come up with. There's negative interest rates now in the world. You can loan a bankrupt government money and you have to pay them for the privilege. If that's not a better example of how crazy this world is, I don't really know what is. But anyway, so they met in Wyoming, and so basically, unfortunately, the topic of how the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, has raped America of its wealth didn't come up. Too bad. There were protesters there, which, I took immediately on the surface as a good thing, and then I learned that these fed up, as they call themselves, fed up protesters are protesting the Fed because they want the Fed to keep interest rates at super low levels. They want them to keep doing what they're already doing. I don't know why you would protest to support the status quo, ignoring the fact that it's these super low interest rate policies that have just given free money to the 1% at the expense of all the saving people of the middle class of America and anyone who isn't a billionaire. So it's It's really, really funny. I guess even the Fed governors kind of called out that these protesters were just funded by one of the Facebook founders, Dustin Moskovitz. And basically, so this loser pays these people to go down there and protest the Fed as if it's some populist movement. And they're arguing that the Fed should keep doing exactly what it's been doing to enrich the 1%. What a fucking weird world. Anyway, going on, the blue team slob Barney Frank and congressional parasite says in public, don't hike the interest rate to the Federal Reserve. Don't raise the interest rate because the U.S. economy is such a withering pile of shit right now that if they raise the interest rate by 1/4%, that it's going to completely collapse, you know, the stock market and the economy and just deflate their illusion that there's been a recovery. So even Congress, you know, these guys are telling the Fed, please don't do anything to upset the fact that Hillary could lose because there's no reason to vote for her at all. You know, except for the illusion that there's been a recovery under Obama and her policies are going to keep that recovery going. Yeah, it's not. But whoever wins the election in the United States for president, the Federal Reserve has made sure that it's going to be a royal clusterfuck, and the whole thing is ready to just, the wheels are coming off the trolley as soon as that election is closed, whether it's Trump or Hillary, so woohoo! Anyway, moving on to the wild international shenanigans across the world. Actually, this is inside the United States too, but technically they're their own nation. The LAKOTA Sioux, the Indians, the First Nations people in the United States around the Dakotas, South Dakota, North Dakota, they are blocking the pipeline construction, the Dakota Access Pipeline, oil pipeline, and the media is completely silent on it. Because oil money shuts them up, and you know, it just really shows how the government screws over people. You know, it's not something that helps us, it's something that screws over anyone who isn't a connected, you know, billionaire. And, you know, in battles between the people and corporate greed, it's the government that hands the victory to the corporate greed every single time. These regulatory agencies do nothing to protect us, they just serve to enrich these cronies that are just leeching off the system as parasites. In Bolivia, the mine workers are basically unleashing holy hell in that country. They recently beat, tortured, and murdered the Minister of the Interior, high government official, Rodolfo Ilanes. This is, you know, the global economic slowdown is basically screwing them in their mining industry, and so they want easier rules for the companies. You know, basically they want lower environmental rules so that they can, you know, make more money and feed their families. So yeah, it's getting crazy down there in Bolivia. And over in the Philippines, they call him the Philippines Donald Trump. His name is Rodrigo Duterte. He's now the prime minister, president, whatever, of the Philippines. And this guy has been saying some wild stuff. He told the UN to go fuck themselves, the United Nations. So I guess he came in, the Philippines got a lot of crazy stuff going on. He's been just killing drug dealers. He's been authorizing extrajudicial killings of all these drug dealers and just no mercy, no holds barred policy. And so he's gotten a little bit of backlash, a little bit of criticism from some people, like the American ambassador, who he promptly called little bitch, faggot, and just like, this guy, yeah. So apparently he's also unleashed a major economic boom in the country. They're economically doing very well, but this wild firecracker is just not having anybody's flack. Quite entertaining. So Robert Mugabe, the dictator of Zimbabwe, over to Africa, he arrested all of the Olympic athletes from Zimbabwe because they failed to win any medals. Oh, that must sting, adding insult to injury. Not much to add to that one. That's kind of funny and sucks for them, but you know, there's the government. Welcome to the government. Next over to the Middle East, the Pentagon admitted losing 750,000 guns in Iraq. Basically, they admitted that they disarmed Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and actually it's now coming out also that Al-Qaeda in Syria has now been rebranded by a different name, and now the U.S. has okayed a whole bunch of weapons shipments to them. So then and now, the United States is just funding terrorism. And if that's news to you, you really need to do some more homework, because this is an evil empire, and I'm not being hyperbolic in saying that. So it's so obvious at this point that the USA creates its own enemies. Even going back to Vietnam, where the weapons that were shipped to Japan for the American soldiers to fight at the end of World War II. Once the world ended, they dropped the nuclear bombs and Japan surrendered. Those weapons didn't come back to the United States, they just got diverted to Ho Chi Minh as he was being inaugurated as leader of Vietnam with an American general on each side. So just like they armed the Vietnamese so that they could fight them in the Vietnam War, now basically they're arming the terrorists of Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the Middle East just so they can have somebody to fight, and the military-industrial complex rolls on. Turkey, basically, Turkey has invaded Syria. A bomb went off, killing some of his political opponents, so he used that as an excuse to invade Syria and kill more of those exact same political opponents under the cover of, we're fighting ISIS. Okay, yeah, so Syria has said, get out, you're not allowed to be here, but Turkey and Erdogan, he doesn't care. So it's further proof that Erdogan has pretty much rebelled from the West. They're giving the big middle finger to NATO, and now they're purging more opponents under the cover of fighting ISIS with Russia. Documents leaked in another issue showing that George Soros, the billionaire scumbag, basically destroys civilizations as a hobby, from Ukraine, where the government there was overthrown and now it's total clusterfuck, to Russia, where he was trying to overthrow Putin in Russia, and I guess Putin saw it coming and he banned all of George Soros's non-governmental organizations from the country, and just kicked them out. So that's kind of funny. And finally, in the international arena, Zbigniew Brzezinski, to those who have done their homework quite well, will know that this is one of the elite parasites, one of the theoretical architects of the American empire and the empire of the West. He was a mentor to Barack Obama, and he was there when Al-Qaeda was armed in Afghanistan and the Taliban, and he's one of the architects of the empire, and he has basically made an about face. He has turned around. He wrote in the magazine American Interest that basically the American empire has kind of failed, and that it's time for the American empire to make ties with Russia and China and stop trying to push them into a corner and confront them in a world war to further American domination and hegemony over the world. So that is a very, very key pivot. We'll see if it bleeds over into the Hillary regime, that one of the architects has basically turned tail on the American Empire project. That can only be good news. And finally, outside of the political realm, actually it's not outside the political realm, a scientific report has come out saying that chemtrails don't exist. Basically, it was a scientific poll of scientists. Apparently in the age of anthropogenic global warming, opinion polls substitute as real science. The study basically showed pictures of lines in the sky, of the aerosol spraying of the sky, to the different respondents and asked for explanations of the phenomena. The respondents gave a wide array of guesses and then gave a confidence level in their guess, and basically, just a wide array of totally ignorant explanations of what's going on. It doesn't even say if any of these people have anything to do with meteorology or geology or anything like that. Just polled a whole bunch of random scientists, and they give their kind of answers about what they think is going on. And this is objective science. These people have their heads so far up their own ass, they need a poll to verify today's lunch. And so that's basically that. The chemtrails don't exist because a whole bunch of people who spend all day every day locked inside a laboratory, basically staring at their own little specialized world of science, apparently have the authority to say what is or isn't happening, obviously, in the sky. Yes, and moving on to some more of the real science, which the mainstream science says isn't real science. It's a topsy-turvy world. Michael Claridge of the Electric Universe community offered a model of the solar system as a great electrical transformer. Very fascinating that the inner planets moving basically very quick orbits represent kind of very tightly wound coil, you know, an electrical coil, and the outer planets with their slower orbits kind of represent like a coil that is wound less tightly, and between these it creates kind of a gradient, a differential of the different voltages. Higher voltage in the inner planets, lower voltage in the outer. And it's kind of like, you know, the planets and the sun are all moving together through the solar system, and you can think of it as a giant wire with different layers of conductors represented by the different planets in their orbits, basically conducting the energy of the sun and transforming it as the entire solar system moves through space. So that's really interesting, kind of new aspect to the model of the electric universe that actually helps us explain the world that we live in and the phenomena that we witness. You know, while new science charges ahead, we have basically these old saggy losers just taking opinion polls among themselves and saying what does or doesn't exist. So it's a wild world. That's all that I have for today. A little long-winded, but you know, it's hard to keep up with all the shenanigans going on in the world. Final thoughts today will be another separate video called I Killed Obamacare, and yes, that kind of speaks for itself, and you can watch that one to find out more. Wholeness and balanced vibrations. I hope you have a wonderful week. Cheers.